On June 17, 1973, 4 men went on a mission to recover a fish trap from the underwater wreck of the destroyer USS Fred T. which is off Key West. They used the Johnson Sea Link, a submersible made by Edwin Albert Link. However, things took a tragic turn, which got 2 divers into big trouble during the mission. The Johnson Sea Link was a deep-sea submersible built by Edwin Albert Link upon the request of his friend Seward Johnson, the founder of the Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute. The Johnson Sea Link was a successor to Deep Diver, a submersible that was previously built by Link for Lockout diving. Lockout diving is a diving adventure done from a diving submersible. In 1968, the Bureau of Ships considered Deep Diver to be dangerous if it was used at great depth or extremely low temperatures. This is because the steel used to build some parts of the Deep Diver usually turned brittle in cold water or cold temperatures. So Edwin Albert Link built the Johnson Sea Link with an acrylic bubble as the forward pilot or observer compartment. The Johnson Sea Link, which was the new submersible replacing the Deep Diver, was launched and commissioned by the Smithsonian Institution in January 1971. The submersible had 2 compartments that carried 2 crew members each. The rear compartment was made for lockout diving. It gives access to 2 divers who are compressed by the surrounding pressure of the ocean. The submersible can work underwater because of this function. The front compartment for the pilot was made to be an acrylic sphere with a diameter of about 5 feet. This allows the pilot and the observer to have an all-inclusive view of the ocean. At the rear starboard side of the acrylic sphere was an air conditioning unit. On June 17, 1973, just 2 years after its launch, the Johnson Sea Link embarked on a mission, Dive 130, from Edwin Link's research ship, the Sea Diver, which was 15 miles out from Key West, Florida. The goal of the mission was to recover a fish trap from the destroyer USS Fred T. The destroyer USS Fred T. DD-858 was constructed by Bethlehem Steel Company in San Pedro, California. A destroyer is a warship that is quick, maneuverable, and long-lasting, and it's used to protect bigger ships in a fleet, convoy, or battle group against strong, short-range assaults. On January 28, 1945, the USS Fred T. was launched. It wasn't commissioned until May 12, 1945. It had a beam of about 41 feet, a draft of about 19 feet, and a length of about 391 feet. In 1950, Fred T. screened carriers launching strikes into battle, and she earned 2 stars for her meritorious service during the Korean War. In May 1972, the Fred T. was sunk by the Underwater Explosive Research Division as an experiment. It's now submerged in 370 feet of water off Key West. The Fred T. was sunk to create a man-made wreck for professional or skilled divers. It's not at all a dive site for recreational divers because its depth requires gas mixes. On the day of the accident, there were 4 crew members aboard the Johnson Sea Link. They were pilot Archibald "Jock" Menzies, 30 years old, who had piloted the Johnson Sea Link about 100 times. Robert Meek, 27 years old, was an ichthyologist and pressure physiologist who served as an observer in the forward compartment. Edwin Clayton Link, 31 years old, was the Smithsonian Institution diving director and the son of Edwin Albert Link. He served as an observer in the rear compartment. And the last person in the submersible was the 51-year-old man who served as a rear compartment observer, Albert Dennison "Smokey" Stover. Menzies, Link, and Stover were not fully prepared for Dive 130, considering the risks that the operation could pose for them. Link and Stover were just in casual dress, shorts, and t-shirts because they'd never planned for a lockout dive. Before they entered the submersible, when Meek saw what these 2 divers were wearing, he reminded them that it was cold down there. The 4 divers went ahead with their plan, but they were unable to recover the fish trap, which was their goal for the mission. After this unsuccessful recovery attempt, the crew encountered a problem down in the deep. A few minutes after 9:45 a.m., the Johnson Sea Link was trapped by the Fred T. wreckage when it was driving away from the sunken ship, 360 feet underwater. Immediately after this unfortunate incident occurred, the U.S. Coast Guard was alerted by the sea diver, and they asked for the naval divers to help them out. But the message depicted that the Johnson Sea Link wasn't in immediate danger. In response to this alert, the naval officer sent the submarine rescue ship USS Tringa, ASR-16, from Key West. However, since the Tringa was still on its way to the rescue site, the team had to devise ways to rescue themselves. While trying to rescue the men in the submersible, the crews of both Johnson Sea Link and Sea Diver thought of using the submersible's lockout ability to send one of the men in the diving compartment to free the submersible from the cable on which it was snagged. But this option was considered hazardous to the health of Link and Stover, who were in the diving chamber. They would be susceptible to oxygen toxicity. While they were waiting for the arrival of Tringa, carbon dioxide levels were rising in the pilot compartment. They couldn't use the carbon dioxide scrubber because it was no longer working. Menzies removed his shirt and poured out all the carbon dioxide absorbent berylline from the scrubber canister into it. Then he allowed the air conditioning unit's circulating fans to blow on it so that the carbon dioxide level in the pilot's cabin could be reduced. The Sea Diver crew planned to control the carbon dioxide in the submersible for 42 hours in the pilot compartment and 61 hours in the diver compartment. But they never considered the fact that due to low temperatures, the berylline in the diver compartment would become ineffective. The acrylic plastic hull of the pilot compartment had a higher temperature because its heat transfer coefficient is lower compared to the aluminum hull of the diver compartment. At about 4:15 p.m., the Tringa came to the accident scene. So Tringa made a 4-point attachment above the Johnson Sea Link. At this time, the temperature within the aluminum diver compartment had reduced considerably and was almost equivalent to the surrounding oceanic temperature of 45 degrees Fahrenheit. By 10 p.m., the berylline in the diver compartment could no longer absorb carbon dioxide. At 10:25 p.m., Link and Stover were breathing from air-supplied masks. 2 divers from the Tringa tried to go down into the Johnson Sea Link, but were blocked by the hull of the Fred T. They tried making Link and Stover do a lockout dive, but the 2 divers didn't agree to this plan. So Menzies and the Sea Diver crew gave up on them doing a lockout dive. By 12:38 a.m. on June 18th, they thought of doing a lockout dive again, but at this point, Link and Stover were too cold to go for such an option. They'd been using a gas mixture of helium and oxygen to breathe, which has made them lose their body heat rapidly. Also, the atmospheric pressure in the diver's compartment became equivalent to the ocean's ambient pressure. When it was 1:12 a.m., Menzies had no option but to report to the surface about the health conditions of Link and Stover. At one point, they couldn't hear from Link and Stover through the audio communication again, so the Tringa tried another rescue operation, which wasn't successful either. On June 18th, it was already afternoon time, and the commercial salvage vessel A.B. Wood II was also sent to the accident scene. This vessel came with an underwater television camera that had a movable podium. It was sent from the Naval Ordnance Laboratory in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They used this camera, which had a clasping hook, to find the Johnson Sea Link. So they attached it to one of the Johnson Sea Link's propeller shrouds and lifted it to the surface. The Johnson Sea Link was brought to the surface at 4:53 p.m. on June 18th. Menzies and Meek were taken out of the Johnson Sea Link to a decompression chamber aboard the Tringa. But the diver's compartment of the Johnson Sea Link was still pressurized, and trying to pull out Link and Stover, if they are still alive, would be risky. So they took the submersible aboard the Sea Diver. They could see both Link and Stover, but they were no longer showing any signs of life to the rescue team. They forced in gas mixes of helium and oxygen and also drizzled over hot water to increase the temperature in the compartment. On the morning of June 19th, Link and Stover were pronounced dead by the medical doctors who attended to them. So they depressurized the compartment and brought their bodies to the Florida Keys Memorial Hospital in Key West. The result of the autopsies conducted on the 2 bodies showed that they both died of respiratory acidosis due to carbon dioxide poisoning. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting cave diving story.